Today I want to talk about the path. What is the actual spiritual path? How to know you're on the path? Many people ask this question. First of all, true spiritual path is protected by itself. So the true spiritual path, the pathless path, will not be known or revealed to people as long as they are not pure vessels. So true path is always the path of purity, selflessness, gratitude, and self-refinement, self-perfection. So many people think that various paths can be defined by words and dogmas and ideas. But the true path, once one reached that level of maturity to discover the path is very difficult to describe in words because it becomes direct experience. And this direct experience is not in the form of Kundalini symptoms like people describe, some kind of a buzz within the body. This buzz and all kinds of symptoms that people consider as Kundalini awakening symptoms are signs to various type of phenomena. It can be occult phenomena, it can be the phenomena of being afflicted by certain viruses. It can also be a type of awakening or becoming aware of awakening to the subtle body. People sometimes use back doors, like intoxicate themselves, use different psychedelic spiritual drugs to invoke certain experiences, go through certain stimulation of upper glands, brain, nervous system, or resort to occult means, or are victims of the occult. Yet all these are not the real path. All these are illusions, delusion, hallucination. So the true path is self-protected by the degree of the purity of that person who steps on this path. No matter how many beautiful talks you listen to, how many interesting books you read, how many interesting people, wannabe gurus or true gurus you meet, will not open up the path, because the path is defined by the degree of selflessness and inner purity. So it will be known only to those who have that purity within, at least to some degree, and have a certain attitude, the attitude of desire to cultivate selflessness and purity within, and also gratitude to life. The majority of people, even though thinking that they could be pure, or they meditate or pray and that defines their purity, are impure. And that's why they cannot discover that path within. They cannot perceive it. Also, the gratitude is of a hypocritical nature. Everyone thinks that spiritual knowledge has to be for free. Well, it is for free for those who are pure. The purity cannot be bought. A true knowledge cannot be purchased either. True knowledge does not sprout out in a barren land. When the land becomes fertile, then in spiritual terms it means pure. Purity is not just obtained like that, cultivated through experiences, through realizing that all the sufferings are self-created, that the perspective of life is victimized. All these false teachings about helping others and whatever the teachings that dwell on the victimized perspective of self take advantage of people because they apply the tactics of manipulation, apply tactics of I want to be something because I'm a victim. So victimization is opposite to purity. The more victimized you are, the less you will realize what purity is and the further away you will be from the true path. The knowledge is like a flower. It unfolds within that soil that is fertile. And the one who realizes that is a mature one. Such person is constantly grateful to life. This gratitude is unconditional. And that's why when people are unconditionally grateful, they're able to receive unconditionally. Victimized people are neither able to give unconditionally nor receive unconditionally. Most of the people are spiritual consumers who think that if they pay for something, they should receive back. It doesn't happen like that. Spiritual knowledge is invaluable. You cannot pay for it. You can offer a gratitude, but the value will never be equal. This knowledge or this information can be, of course, misused, as all other things are misused and misinterpreted in this day and age. But the knowledge itself, its essence, its experience, it's always self-protected. It will never sprout out in the soil which is filled with inner field. And inner field means the idea of knowing it, of doing something. Spiritual action is delusive. So as intellectual baggage that we carry within ourselves, all these ideas and concepts, dogmas that we carry around are our impurities. We base our notion of life on them. And that's why we fail to see the truth, which is already there all the time. So we think that the process of refinement is so complex. It is complex because the complexity is the actual being at the moment for the majority of people. So you cannot see beyond the complexity. But the natural being is always there at all times. If one is free from all these constraints, one is constantly bathing in this blissful emptiness. Yet for the majority of the people, it requires so much action because they think that it requires action when it requires only awakening to the natural being. This natural being is like a space permeating everything, containing everything. How can it be achieved? How can it be purchased? How can it be given? It is already there. But in order to realize that for the majority of people, they need to cultivate purity, which means let go of all that rubbish, of all those veils, misconceptions of life, all their stories, all their victimized programs. The more victimized you are, the more you see life and spirituality through that victimized perception. You constantly need help, you're crippled, you need someone from outside to help you because you're so weak. This kind of people are hardly ever getting any chance to get closer to real knowledge. And even if they do, they will never recognize it because the veils of victimization are so strong. They overpower. True confidence is contentment. When you're content, you're not looking for anything. You're bathing in your contentment, in your natural being. You're not searching for anything. You're not complaining about anything. You don't gossip about anything. You don't look for any salvation. You perceive yourself as the source of all the waves, whether negative or positive, and you're fully responsible. In this case, you become a fertile soil, the fertile soil to receive the knowledge. Yet it doesn't mean that this knowledge will necessarily sprout out. You may receive the knowledge, but how it's going to sprout out will be defined by the degree of your purity and selflessness. That's why some people receive knowledge. They awake to themselves. But awakening doesn't mean that you've achieved anything. You've just stepped on the path. You made the first step, but the path is long and the work of refinement is tedious. Most of the people don't make much progress because they don't realize that it's not about spiritual action. The amount of action in general in their life. It's about perception. It's about how they are able to refine their perception, to shift it, to understand life in a more and more unconditional way. So letting go is not usually of letting go of people or events. It's about letting go of certain constraints within the self, within the consciousness that create stories which cling to people. So once you refine, you are able to perceive yourself in a more and more profound way. And this is the wisdom, this is the path of wisdom and the path towards perfection. Most of the people fail because they experience awakening, they experience certain feeling in the body, they experience basically subtle body and assume that this is an achievement. They assume that if their subtle body is having certain movements or certain expression, that they are spiritually awakened. Spiritual awakening, the true spiritual awakening, has to result in selflessness and purity and absolute humility, where the person knows their value but doesn't yell about it, is constantly content and flowing, free in self-expression and free internally and externally. The biggest obstacle on the path becomes uncontrolled creativity or creative energy. When during awakening, some things are let go of, yet there is a new layer rising up, and the person starts associating with it and creates something out of self. This is the path, or any true path doesn't even require to be named. It's the path of disillusionment, the path of unbecoming, not becoming anything you cannot. It's the path of dissolution of the old idea of life, self, reality, and everything within that reality. So it's not the path of ambition or achievement. That achievement cannot be measured by the illusion itself. That's why it cannot be purchased. Your degree of purity, your degree of selflessness will define your achievement only for yourself. No one needs to define it. It is only clear to self. The more perfect you become, it means the more refined your perception is. And this refined perception manifests in your form, manifests in your being, together with the form, or the being in the form. And that's why that form starts emanating that being. That is called pure spiritual transmission. Nowadays, many people transmit. They consider themselves something. What are they transmitting? What can they transmit? They can transmit spiritual emotions, just emotions. Poetry is a certain expression of self, which is a certain type of transmission. Music is a certain type of transmission. Other people's conversations, other people's emotional talks, whatever we perceive around us has a certain frequency or degree of transmission, but these are not spiritual transmissions. Some people assume they're gurus and they copy someone else's actions and delude people and say they're transmitting. They're transmitting their assumption of life. They're transmitting their emotions. They're transmitting their corrupt core. Because truth is transmitted by itself. It doesn't have an intention. It is emanation. The sun does not emanate with a purpose. It's just there all the time. The same is the spiritual transmission. Spiritual transmission is not some deliberate action or intention even. That's called magic, occult, and ignorance at the same time. True transmission is emanation. It is at all times there. It doesn't have any intention. This emanation is the sign of purity, internal, evolved emptiness, blissful emptiness, which just emanates effortlessly. Then it's pure, because it's coming from emptiness, emanates emptiness, and makes everyone else perceive it as such. There is no distortion in between. There's no desire to prove, there's no desire to heal, there is no desire to teach. There's no desire to show anything. That's the pure, naked self. It emanates. That is the actual transmission. When a clown, a spiritual fool, tries to show something, concentrate, emanate something, what do they emanate? They emanate falsehood and their own ignorance, their own emotions, spiritual emotions. They are filled up vessels. Filled up vessels cannot know of emptiness, that cannot contain emptiness, because they're filled up to the brim. Truth is empty. It's a radiation of the essence of the reality and existence. It doesn't require names, forms, tags, conditions. Even if it holds a certain tag, the tag will never define the essence of it, because the essence will always be hidden and self-protected as the path. It is only the experience. If you are able to experience the same emptiness within yourself, you awake to your natural being. You turn within and realize the way you create illusion, the way you come out of the stillness, the way you pollute your being with all kinds of unnecessary movements within that empty space. And that's how you realize the truth. But realization of the truth will not push you to run with a banner and say, I'm enlightened, or to run around and scream that you transmit. The transmission is effortless. The transmission is just the being. it is not the transmission of this or that. It is the emanation of existence through the form. That's the difference. And that's what most of the people don't get. Why do you fall for spiritual action? No matter what you do, yoga and samadhi are of being, they are not of action. If you're able to maintain that being through whichever action, you'll experience true spiritual integration into the form. You'll integrate that being into the form, and the form will also get enlightened. Many people go halfway. They awaken to the subtle, they feel some buzz, they assume something, create, recreate, and tangle with this reality in whichever possible spiritual, emotional way. But there is no accomplishment. True accomplishment is the integration, the spiritual integration, subtle integration in the form, and the form gets enlightened and emanates that being and offers the same experience to others, even beyond words. Those who are pure enough to discover that knowledge within themselves get a chance to realize it fully, provided they are cultivating inner purity and selflessness, as well as gratitude to their existence.